Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show host or the guest are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hi there, welcome to this. This is the 41st episode of A Couple Takes on MS. Hi, this is Dan Digman.
And hi, it's me, Jennifer Digman.
And we want to welcome you to this program because we are going to talk about pain and multiple sclerosis. And if you just a slight background in case you are new to the show, I'm Dan and I've had MS, relapsing remitting MS, for nearly 20 years, and Jennifer.
And I'm Jennifer, Dan's wife, and I also have multiple sclerosis, and I've been living with MS for a little over 20 years, and my multiple sclerosis now is categorized as secondary progressive. And, you know, when we were talking about a program for today, I kept just thinking, gosh, MS is such a pain. And not only is it a pain, but it can cause pain. And so that's what we thought we would talk to you all about today.
And just in terms of like the pain that we have, but just truly how common pain is in multiple sclerosis. And there's something, the National MS Society had a report on this.
Yes, and in this description about pain in multiple sclerosis, one study done by the National MS Society said that 55% of people with MS had clinically significant pain at some time, and another 48% were troubled by chronic pain. And the study suggested that things like the age of onset, length of time with MS, and the degree of difficulty or disability, played no part in distinguishing the people's pain. So, you know, whether you were diagnosed 20 years ago like me or 5 years ago, I fortunately currently am not living with pain right now. But if you're diagnosed a few years ago, you may have pain. So much like the disease is not the same for any two people, pain obviously doesn't treat any two people the same.
And I think that was really interesting, just that the length of time you've had multiple sclerosis doesn't necessarily dictate or indicate you would have more pain. And I think that's interesting, just that, yeah, it's like if you're newly diagnosed, you could have really bad pain, where somebody who's had it for years and years and years may not have any pain. I fortunately haven't had any, I would say, MS-related pain, but I think that the interesting, well, not interesting, but it's just that you
I have had pain. You know, I've been...
What kind?
Well, I've been diagnosed, I was diagnosed when I was 23 years old and been living with the disease for 20 years. And up until about 6 years ago, I was completely pain-free. You know, I've been in my wheelchair now 16 years. So, you know, for the first 5-6 years of my disease, I had no problems. And then, you know, there's pain associated with sitting in a wheelchair, being in a wheelchair, and that was solved by me getting a more elaborate wheelchair, one that tilts in space and helps relieve pressure. But coincidentally, I got the wheelchair to relieve the pressure, and a whole new ball game opened with a certain really, really acute pain, which is what some of us living with multiple sclerosis have. Just looking at the definition again, I'm quoting or citing from the National MS Society. Acute pain is neurological in nature and is caused by short circuiting of the nerves and that carry sensation. And the short circuiting of nerves was exactly the kind of pain I had. About 6 years ago, I started feeling this kind of weird sensation on the right side of my face. And then poor Dan, I would be sleeping and it would wake me up from a sound sleep screaming.
Those were dark days. I mean, you had so much pain. I mean, just for me and relating to that, and for everyone out there listening, the pain I've had, like pain caused by something wrong dental work. I had a really deep cavity that hadn't been treated, and the pain, and you would wake up, poor Jennifer would wake up in the middle of the night and just be screaming because of the pain, and the doctors, you found that it was
trigeminal neuralgia. And trigeminal neuralgia is a stabbing pain in the face that can be like one of the initial symptoms of MS, or it can just happen, halfway through your journey with the disease. And for me, it was horrible. I mean, I don't want to make any of you cringe, but if any of you have fillings in your teeth and you accidentally chew on aluminum foil or bite something like aluminum foil on your fillings, that painful zing that you feel? Well, that is a kind of zing that is, I think, pretty relatable to trigeminal neuralgia. And I would have that pain when I would eat.
Couldn't eat anything cold?
Couldn't eat anything cold or sweet or sour. I stopped brushing my teeth. I will be the first to admit, as unhygienic as that sounds, brushing my teeth, pursing my lips to spit was painful. Kissing you, my love, that was painful. I mean, if somebody stroked the right side of my face, I mean, even talking about this right now, Dan, I'm cringing and my hands are getting clammy because this was the worst pain that I ever experienced. And I don't know if any of you out there are art lovers, but if you know the picture, the Edvard Munch painting The Scream.
Yeah.
I didn't check my facts on this, but I heard once that Edvard Munch was dealing with trigeminal neuralgia, and that was kind of the inspiration for his painting The Scream. And if you don't know it, look it up. And I'm not sure if that's a true story, but I remember telling my neurologist that, and she said I wouldn't be surprised. I've heard it's incredibly painful, and unfortunately, some people end up, getting addicted to pain medication, trying to find something to alleviate the problem.
Well, and I think that's the interesting thing is just, when we think multiple sclerosis, disease of the central nervous system, I know when I was first diagnosed and living with it, I was looking, and our main concerns were more about mobility and function and everything, and not usually, it wasn't until after living with it for a little while did I realize about the whole pain factor. And Lord knows we're not alone. So everyone listening, just check in with us when look and send us messages like, how has MS affected you with pain? And just on Twitter, it's Dan at DanJenDig, or on our website, danandjenniferdigman.com. Just comment and be part of this conversation, because this is obviously with the report from the MS Society. It's common to have this pain, and I think another acute pain that we've seen, I don't believe I've experienced, but like everyone talks about, the MS hug.
Yes,
and
that MS hug, where you feel that like someone is hugging you around your midsection. And I think I've heard it. I know that I knew someone that had the MS hug, and it affected how much she was eating. She couldn't eat, and it's just terribly uncomfortable. And that's a type of that acute pain like trigeminal neuralgia or Lhermitte's, the Lhermitte's pain. When you put your head down, if you're living with multiple sclerosis, and you feel that shock that goes up your spine, that's Lhermitte's, and that's another example of acute pain.
And I think, really then with this conversation, it's like always talk to your doctor, because I think that was the interesting thing, because when one of the first things that was at least on record for me that led to my diagnosis was at one point in time talking to my doctor for my physical. I had commented about a shocking sensation down my spine when I looked down to change the radio, and I was overweight at the time, and the doctor had kind of passed that off as just pinching a nerve, and was like a sensation because I was a little chubby. But then a year later, when I was having numbness in my hands, they could cite that back and look and pin it on Lhermitte's, that's probably what it was then, and that led to a quicker diagnosis.
Yes.
And so with this, Jennifer, you talked about the searching. You talked about people becoming addicted to pain medicine or just trying to find a solution. You actually had tried several different medications.
I did, and I was not, medications are available, and each person handles it differently. I know we have a dear friend, Tracy, who is living with trigeminal neuralgia, and it's not as horrible, or she's just, I don't want to say I'm weak, or it was just so upsetting to me, and it just, the quality of my life was really decreasing. And that's when I fortunately reached out and I found a neurosurgeon who performed gamma knife surgery, which is a big step, but I had gamma knife surgery, and that alleviated the pain from my trigeminal neuralgia. And so, I was taking medication and I wasn't getting relief. And of course, one of the symptoms of medication, there are tons of symptoms, but with the medication I was taking, I felt very, if you could see me air quote, I would say doped up. I just felt very lethargic, and I was tired all the time. And I was a little I wasn't sharp, I was a little slow, and I didn't really have much will to go on and do things. And I remember being just tired all the time.
Well, and it's like you were doped up, and it didn't provide the relief that you needed. And so the gamma knife surgery, what a blessing. And that's, but the thing is, because, we all are living with MS and a progressive disease, I'm always concerned when you, at night or something, you'll say, I don't want to eat this because I have a little twinge. And you're just like, is this not what the disease does to us all? Is we're always living on edge, or you're always just waiting for it to unleash. And
for that other shoe to drop. And so I will not lie that although it's been almost 4 years, July of 2018 will be 4 years since my gamma knife surgery, I'm always afraid. If I get a twinge in my mouth, or if I think I'm getting a cavity, I'm like, is it a cavity or is it trigeminal neuralgia again? I live in fear, and that's not a comfortable place to live. But that pain was excruciating, and I was miserable. And so, I try to take care of myself and to be active and to take my medicine and to continue my Rituxan infusions, which is treatment for me. But I encourage anyone, if you're not on treatment for your multiple sclerosis, to do it, because the disease is at work even if you don't see the symptoms yet. This disease is busy attacking your central nervous system.
And just whether or not it's attacking the parts that are going to impact your functionality.
Yes.
and pain. I think that's the big thing. But that's something too, if you think you're experiencing pain. And a lot of times I think that's the thing that those of us with MS do. A lot of times we like to give MS the credit for everything that's bad. And so it's like, don't give it that much credit. I mean, if you're having pain, talk to your doctor, talk to your physician, talk to people who can look at it, diagnose it as some kind of pain, because maybe such a thing, it is something that they can treat, that it has absolutely nothing to do with your multiple sclerosis. I know that early on in my diagnosis, my hands are always numb, and that's, numbness is a huge symptom for multiple sclerosis. But at the same time, I write for a living, and I'm doing a ton of typing, and so then there's this thought of, could it be carpal tunnel?
Right.
And because they can do things to fix the carpal tunnel, I thought, wouldn't that be awesome? But I checked, and no dice. It was indeed the multiple sclerosis. However, but that ruled things out. So then I knew what it was. But wouldn't that have been awesome had it been the carpal tunnel that it could have fixed?
Right. It would have been, and as I was talking, we were defining acute pain. The trigeminal neuralgia, the MS hug, the Lhermitte's, that acute pain. But you, my love, are dealing with chronic pain that is somewhat associated to your multiple sclerosis, or it's just chronic pain?
Just chronic pain. I think it's in my feet. It's in the arches of my feet, and I think that's the thing. It's been, I've seen two podiatrists, and they both concluded it was plantar fasciitis. But I thought it was interesting, and I'm not a doctor, but just how they both were just perplexed that it was happening in both feet, and it's like in the same region, in the arches and everything. I talked to my neurologist about it, and he didn't feel that it was really MS related, but it's really painful in my feet, and I'm wearing their orthotics, of which they prescribed and fitted me for and everything, but it's really sore, and I think that's where it's not fair, because to think that I start stumbling around, and God forbid, it's like if we're at the bar having dinner or whatever, I'm drinking beer. It's just like
think you're drunk.
They'll think I'm drunk, and it's like I'm not drunk. And again, isn't that the best saying that we all always say? Those of us with MS, I'm not drunk, I have MS. But it's that pain, and I know that there are things, and bless you, because you got me, and this isn't a product endorsement, but you got me the Aspercreme just to put on my feet, and
right.
It seems potentially to, at least temporarily, and again, it could just be the placebo, but temporarily provide some relief.
And it is with the chronic pain. That chronic pain will, whether or not it's caused by multiple sclerosis, it will affect your MS. If you have chronic pain in your feet, then you walk differently. So will you get hip pain, or will you walk differently and you'll compensate and your knees will start getting sore? Or if you have pain in your lower back, you won't sleep as well, and so that will snowball effect with your multiple sclerosis. You're not sleeping as well, so you're not feeling up to exercising, or you say, oh, I don't have to take my shot today. That's why pain, you really need to talk to a neurologist, get on some sort of treatment program or plan to try and deal with the pain. And unfortunately, we have a group member of our support group who is living with chronic pain, and she cannot manage it. She just it doesn't seem to be letting up for her, and she just is looking all over for treatment options. And whether you agree or don't agree, she was talking in our last support group meeting about marijuana and how marijuana could help her as someone living with chronic pain.
And we've seen that. I know there's we have some good friends in the blogging community who will swear by marijuana, swear by cannabis, and
the CBC oil,
the oils and everything. And I think that's where it's something, the interesting thing, because we live here in Michigan, and actually come November 6th, it's on our ballot that we are going to vote, Michigan voters will vote on legalizing
marijuana.
like, but not medical, but just
just for
recreational.
for everyone. And if marijuana becomes legal in Michigan, we will be the 10th state in the nation to have marijuana legal. And so whether you agree or don't agree, I mean, it's something we're looking into because, multiple sclerosis is pretty large in the state of Michigan. The MS belt here, this area in the would you call us Midwest?
We're Midwest through and through.
Midwest, this northern cold climate state where the prevalence of MS seems to be a little higher, whether it's because of the people that inhabit Michigan or if it's because of the weather. Again, Dan and I have talked about the incidence and the prevalence of MS before. We don't know exactly what it is, but it would be really interesting if marijuana was legalized in the state for the number of people living with MS. And, I don't know if I would use marijuana if it was legal. I don't know if you would, Dan.
I think that would I'm not at a point where I'm looking for something like that, and it's kind of like I would equate marijuana, whether recreation or for medicinal purposes. Obviously,
Right.
You're doing one for, but I think that I would equate it to like the oral meds, all the disease-modifying therapies. It's like
Right.
I'm taking an injectable. I've always taken the injectable. I'm not in the market to try an oral, but every time they introduce one, I celebrate because it's like this is so great for the MS community that we have another treatment option. So would I take an oral med? Probably not. Would I smoke marijuana? Would I do whatever with cannabis? Whatever?
Right.
Not necessarily, but what a great thing that there is one more option out there for
Right.
people living with MS, especially for the pain. I think that's what that is relieving the pain.
And I think that's very important. Just to know, I think your analogy or what did you just saying that much like the different disease modifying therapies do have this as another choice for pain control, having medicinal or marijuana legalized, that's another option for pain treatment. And I think that's really good. And we've talked about all these different kinds of pain, whether it be acute or chronic. Chronic, and then I'm sorry, that's a marijuana joke that dates me back to the early 90s, or is it the late 90s when I graduated from college with the chronic. But marijuana and pain control, I think it's very important, and it does. Just at the end of the day, you need to talk to your primary care doctor or your neurologist, because I don't think any of us living with multiple sclerosis should be dealing with pain if we can find a strategy or a way to handle it.
Well, and I think that is the big thing, is that if you're having pain and you think whether or not it's associated with your multiple sclerosis, talk to your doctor, talk to your physician, because obviously with like the numbers Jennifer read, you're not alone. That a sizable portion of people living with MS, at least at some point in their journey, had that pain, whether it's the MS hug, whether it's trigeminal neuralgia.
And pain can make such an emotional burden. And that is something that, you need to take care of your quality of life. You need to take care of the people you love and the people that love you. Your care partners or the people you're taking care of. So emotionally, you can't let pain take over. Physically and emotionally, that's why you need to treat it. I think that's a really important point about it.
And so with everybody out there, what are your thoughts on what are you dealing with pain, and would you, if it's legalized in your state, would you use marijuana? Would you use cannabis? I mean, what have you used? What would you be willing to do to help treat the pain? I think check in with us, email us on our website. There's a link there at danandjenniferdigman.com, or send us a tweet. We're on Twitter at DanJenDig.
Reach out to the community, to the MS community. There are a lot of Facebook groups, and there are different groups, just ways to reach out so that we're not going through this alone.
I was going to say that's the big thing, is you truly aren't alone in this. You just it's out there. Reach out to people, see what's there,
and see what worked for them. It may work for you, or you may be able to share your experience. Like me, gamma knife therapy worked really well for my trigeminal neuralgia. I would highly recommend it. It's scary surgery, but it was really, really good. In 4 years, I've, knock wood, been pain-free.
And that's very good. But thank you all for listening, and thank you to the MS&Me Radio Network for inviting us to be and to share our stories and perspectives on the MS&Me Radio Network. This is Dan and Jennifer Digman again. Thanks to the Blue Giraffe Kid for composing the theme music for our show. Check in with us again. It's at DanJenDig on Twitter and danandjenniferdigman.com. Take care.